We are back on Morning Line, taking your phone calls, talking politics with MTSU Professor John Weil. It's good to have you on, as always.
Thank you.
I really enjoy our time together, and you come on often when these things happen, things being stuff in D.C. Just real quick before we get to the phone calls, and we've got some lines open, too, if you want to jump in. Just in terms of voting blocks, and you look at, like, President Trump's core support, the ones that are steadfast, the ones he says he could shoot someone in the street and they'd still vote for him, which, by the way, disturbs me a bit. But I don't think you should do that for any politician. But there's a core support there. Is it predominantly white, is it not?
It is, you know, and I can't remember his name, but one of the president's stronger supporters yesterday, one of the points that he made, which was obviously political, was they don't like us. They don't like the 63 million, and he referred to the flyover country. He's portraying it as, you know, these are the Eastern and the West Coast elites against the rest of us. What was Hillary Clinton's phrase? Not the intolerables.
Oh, yeah, I know. I know what you're talking about. Yeah. It'll hit me in a second.
Right.
Yeah.
It's sort of this notion.
The deplorables.
Deplorables, right.
The deplorables.
And you know, Trump actually used, and it was a terrible thing for her to say, but he sort of used it. Yeah, we're deplorables, you know, make them, you know, I'm with the, you know, here's this billionaire who's one of us, right? He's blue collar Joe.
Right. One thing, blue collar doesn't. I see President Trump as a businessman.
Well, no, I do too, but his
identity. The fact that some people perceive him as blue collar to me is laughable. I mean, this guy is a very successful, very wealthy businessman, and has been since the day he was born with his family. But, and there's nothing wrong with that. All right, so in terms of the election and coming up, and you contrast this perhaps to the turnout that was there when Barack Obama was running.
Right.
So, I mean, there are those who have said, look, if the core group of all the African American and Hispanic citizens in this country go to the polls, coupled with the Caucasians that maybe are anti-Trump, there's no way he can win. They're saying if they all turn out, and it all comes out to turn out, because I know there are Hispanics and blacks that support President Trump, but they are in the minority based on much of what, if you're, I still wonder with the Hispanics, and it has to be single issues, who support President Trump, where does that come from with some of the things he said about people from Mexico? That to me boggles my mind.
Well, some of them, of course, are people who think that, who actually went through the process, you know, waited in line and feel like others
and I can understand that.
That's a good example. Probably part of it. You know, it's worth pointing out, and it doesn't affect his legitimacy at all, but Trump actually did not win the popular vote last time. You know, we're closely split here, and you know, I would hope that this time, whichever way it goes, that the winner of the Electoral College would also be the winner of the popular vote. So you have a more
clear-cut.
But again, President has in these flyover states, each of them have at least 2 senators, regardless of the population, and that counts in the Electoral College.
Now, is it fair, you think, to say that the turnout among the African American vote nationally, with, you know, President Obama not being in the mix, and, you know, a non-black candidate, which, and I understand why African Americans came out for the first black president, that makes sense, but was it down, and is there a chance some of those who voted during the Obama campaigns will come back and vote now this time?
Well, and we talked about what's the effect of impeachment on the election, and it could go both ways. I mean, you obviously have Republicans who think that, you know, their candidate is being mistreated, but you also have Democrats who think, you know, that he's not getting a fair shake for another reason. A lot will depend on the candidate. Joe Biden, I think, has his greatest strength is his support among African Americans. If he were to be the Democratic nominee, I think he has a better chance of pulling them in. But of course, Cory Booker obviously would do the same. Kamala Harris, had she not, you know, dropped out. But you know, partly again, this one of the things about the vice presidency is sometimes you can tweak that. You know, if you get somebody fairly,
the ticket that you end up with,
can sometimes help.
And that, we have to remember, whoever the candidate comes out from the Democrats will be very interesting. Let's go to Tom. Tom, good morning. Hi, Tom.
Hi, good morning, Nick. How you doing?
Good. What's on your mind?
Well, I'm sitting here listening to y'all talking about political, and I'm sort of skeptical about the electoral votes. How do I know myself if all it is what we got 11 people here in Tennessee that does the the votes or whatever, college votes. How do I know all of them's not Republicans? Or how do I know all of them's not Democrats?
You mean the delegates when they go?
Yeah, and because, see, I just started voting here about 6 years ago.
Good for you.
And I've been so disgusted with voting for these people. It's got to the point where I can't trust man, which I don't really trust man anyway. I never have. But the people up there in the White House right now, they're so busy fighting amongst each other, they don't have time to think about us. You know, it's just like I said about a raise yesterday when we was on TV. I get a 1.6 point percent raise, and Medicare takes it away.
Yeah.
Well, they ought to be working trying to help people like me and the other people trying to get where we can live. Because as I told you yesterday, $841 a month, Social Security.
Yeah. That's not going to go far. I mean, it's tough. Well, he's hitting. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, he's reminding me of, remember the first Clinton campaign. It's the economy, stupid.
Right, and I was going to ask you about that.
With all that we say about these legal issues and about sort of the food fights that you see, for a lot of people it's going to be bread and butter issues.
It's going to be their pocketbook.
In many ways, that that's been one of Trump's things that he's touting. Lowest unemployment in a long time, stock market's doing very well.
Right, so the economy, I mean, that's what I was going to ask you. Against all this, we can talk impeachment and a lot of other issues that come into play, but ultimately Americans, will look at, am I better off now than I was 4 years ago?
That was Reagan's
how
big
am
line.
and how am I doing financially? Because, and I understand that, you could say that's a little superficial, but you understand how people are doing personally.
Part of the role of government.
Putting food on the table and having employment is probably the most important thing, along with security for your family, and that's understandable. So, as it stands now, I mean, the country in some aspects in the economy is doing quite well. I think that's, on the other hand, there are issues with the tariffs and other things that have hurt some folks as well. And so I don't know, how big a play with all this, could that end up being the Trump issue, if you will, come election time, where people are going to look and say, well,
keep America great. That seems to be the new slogan. And
I'm making more money. My nephew's got the job. He was unemployed for a while. I'm going to vote that way. And is the economy doing that great gangbusters that could give him support there?
Well, it certainly would be a positive right now compared to what it could have been.
Right. Right.
Low inflation, relatively low unemployment.
Yeah, so those types of things are things that can really help him. That's just the back burner ultimately people might look at. And would that be both Democrats and Republicans?
Well, I mean, again, you tend to blame, correctly or not, you tend to credit or blame the incumbent for how the economy's doing. So if it's doing well, that's going to help the incumbent.
Gotcha. Let's go to Ronnie. Hi, Ronnie. Good morning.
Morning.
What's on your mind, Ronnie?
I got a couple questions. One, the whistleblower. Why is he spying on the government when he's doing stuff and then telling everybody he may have a special plan to do something and holding the money back for a couple of weeks or something like that? I mean, they do it to us every now and then, but they don't need to impeach him. They just need to give him a fine or something and do that. But I believe they need to have more cheap housing and stuff like that for.
Okay, well, yeah, and the whistleblower, again, a lot of people have a misunderstanding of the role of a whistleblower, whether right or wrong. They bring attention forward, and yeah, the whistleblower played a key role. And by the way, his identity's still not been released, he or she.
Not formally. And frankly, there are a lot of Republican calls still, and this is one of the things that Trump wants us to bring in the whistleblower. As far as I can tell, 90% of what he or she said has already been vindicated.
Right.
The question is not who brought it forward, it's did what they bring forward, was it correct or not?
That's the key.
In terms of holding back the money
from the Ukraine.
Right. It approached, now they didn't make in some ways I wish, one way that this might have been a little less partisan, as crazy as it sounds, is if there had been more charges for impeachment, then some people could at least say, well, I don't think this is a charge that will stick, but I think this one was. And one of the possible charges was actually bribery. I mean, in a sense, you're using money that Congress has appropriated to try to extort or bribe somebody into doing behavior, in this case, what appears to be, research on your opposition. But again, they've chosen to keep it as narrowly focused as they can.
And you have said the Republicans in these hearings have basically not so much challenged that he did that,
right,
but more that they're challenging.
So what?
Yeah, so what? And so I'm trying to get a handle on the big picture of why is that bad or why is that not bad. And I mean, I think in a way Ronnie made a point, sometimes our own president or government will hold back signing the budget, and for a while the government will shut down. So to maybe get something he or she wants, is it that wrong?
Well, if you're going to hold my Social Security check until I pledge to vote for the president, then that's wrong.
That's wrong. And anyone who doesn't agree with that, because I have a problem. I think some people, who are saying, what did the president do wrong? If you put it to them that way and they still think that's not a problem, then there's something wrong with you. If you're like, look, I'm going to hold back your Social Security check unless you vote for me. If you think that's okay, you're an idiot. So I'm not saying it got to that level with Ukraine, but I think that's a good example. But there are others that say, well, that never really happened, though. Now, he did kind of hold some back, but the Ukrainian leader never did open up an investigation.
Right. And part of that seems to be that's when the whistleblowers sort of blew the whistle, and it appears as though Trump realized this could really go south fast and take care of it.
What amazed me is just how many people were on what he calls that perfect phone call.
Oh, it's amazing.
And when it first happened, I thought, well, maybe there was one assistant there, but now it sounds to me like he was on the phone. There were like 8 or 9 other people on other phones.
I feel sort of left out that I wasn't part of it.
Is that standard stuff that everyone's listening?
I don't know. It was news to me.
And why? And did he say? Because I'm sure you're president. You say, I want to talk to him in private. Get off the phone. He could have done that, but a bunch of people were listening in. Let's go to Carolyn. Hi, Carolyn. Good morning.
Good morning to y'all.
Good morning. What's on your mind?
Well, I think that you either hate Trump or you love him. I love him. Mm-hmm. I think he's kept his word about everything he said he was going to do. The Democrats have tried to keep his hands tied. They've tried to distract him in every way they can because they don't want him to succeed. But this is going to all boil down to how many Christians realize that the Democratic Party has changed. They're not the party they used to be. During him trying to get judges in there on the Supreme Court, the main issue with the Democrats was who's going to be for abortion, and so it was just a circus. They tried to discredit the judges in any way they could. They're crooked.
Can you give me some examples of some things that you like about what the president has done, where he's kept his promise and things, kind of specific things that you kind of liked?
Well, I like the fact that the economy is doing great. He lowered taxes. I like the fact that he has tried his best to build a wall, which he promised he would do, and most people are for that. And I think the reason that a lot of the Mexicans are for him is because they came to this country to get away from the bad people that's coming here.
They came here. Yeah, I agree. Did he promise that the Mexicans would pay for the wall?
Well, he did say that, but I don't think he was really meaning that. I think it was just a joke.
Okay, see, that's what's interesting. She's a big supporter. Right. It's like the supporters and the partisanship, and I think she's right. There's a lot of people that love him, a lot of people that hate him, and I think there's a good amount in the middle there. But it's like when you're that partisan, it's like, well, I like all these things. Then when you point out something that maybe he didn't deliver, that's okay. I didn't. No one ever acknowledges, you know what? Yeah, he didn't do what he said on that one. I mean, you can't have it both ways, in my opinion. I call the shots, whoever I support, both ways. If they do or they don't. I don't just gloss it over, and that's what I see. The heavy partisans gloss stuff over, and I'm talking about on both sides.
One of the interesting things that Carolyn said, and it's partly true, was that the Democrats are not what they used to be. That's probably even truer of the Republicans. Republicans used to be the party of fair trade. Republicans used to be the party that was more concerned about balanced budgets. Republicans used to be the people who were saying, if a person doesn't know how to speak and act in public, they're not appropriate for the president. So there's been some changes on both sides.
A lot of changes, and I think the president is unlike any Republican candidate ever.
I think that's
You
right.
could find similarities in the past between a lot of these Republican, presidential candidates or presidents. He is in a world unto himself, if you ask me.
He seems to be.
He really
Yes.
is. Listen, we'll take a break. We'll come back with more of your phone calls right after this. Stay with us. We will be right back.